here in the community. Wayne runs Willow Tree.
Willow Tree Muffler Center in Hall River,
Yep.
North Carolina.
Willow Tree Lawn Care in
Yep.
Graham, North Carolina.
So we got lawn care and Muffler, two kind of like real tried and true American businesses. Oh, not necessarily American. I mean, we do have the loudest mufflers, I imagine, but we do have some of the nicest lawns that I've seen around the world. So we'll start with Wayne. How did your story start? How did you end up at Willow Tree? Like, where did you start off at?
Well, like Evan said, I'm his grandfather, and so I have some age on me. You know, I'm 68 next week, and I started in the muffler business, or I started that business in the year 2000, June 1st, I think, when we opened. It's just, I wanted something so I would have, after I retire from working for the public, if you will, working for the man, I'll have something I can do. Hopefully, that was my whole idea was to have some type of income, because I didn't think, of course, that definitely Social Security wouldn't do it. And I didn't know how well my 401k, because I was older before I could start even saving the 401k or even IRA. So anyway, the building came available. I used to work there. It was an old SO service station, and I used to work there in 1972 as a gas jockey. I just pumped gas back whenever you used to wash the windshields and check the oil, the old time stuff. But anyway, it was kind of sentimental. The building come available, so I took the plunge and bought it. Excellent location, high traffic volume. My banker came, looked at it, and he said, location, 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 and he was true. You know, that was the only endeavor. I've had multiple tries at entrepreneurship in the past several times, but I never was really successful. It wasn't profitable. And that has been. So I worked I was in the electronics field with BD Diagnostics, and I retired from them, or left them actually, I guess you would say, or retired from public work in 2017. 2015. And in 2017, after a couple of years, I decided to open up the lawn care. The muffler business was successful. It's still successful to this day. I've had some rough times. So then I ran that for a few years, and then Evan became old enough, and he had interest in the business. So we're now I'm still the owner of it, but, he's if you would say co-owner, and at some point that would be turned over to him. But that's basically my history.
I imagine that throughout, like you said, you had some failures.
Yep.
Early on. I imagine there were points where you were like, yeah, maybe entrepreneurship isn't for me.
Yeah, there was definitely, even with the muffler business, it wasn't a success right off the bat. There was times I wanted to throw my hands up. I would work, honestly, I still worked a full-time job. I just had good people. My stepfather helped me with the business. He ran the business during the day while I worked 8 to 5 job or 9 to 5 job. And but there was times, especially in economic downturn in 2008, I was ready to sell it. You could just see. But we had the overhead of the business, and he was able. He said, "No, let's don't do it." That he became to like the business, and so he bought into it, if you will, at that time, and bought a half ownership, and that way he was able to pay off the building. That was the problem at the time. I couldn't afford the payments.
The mortgage itself.
And was able to pay that off, so that helped a great deal. And then I able to pay him back as the time went on, and he has since passed. And so there are definitely times in my past on other endeavors, and even in this endeavor, that I just felt like it was impossible to do. But
why'd you get back up?
Why to get back up?
Yeah.
You have to keep climbing. You have to keep going for it. You just can't give up. You have to. I was taught never to give up, and just keep hitting at it. And just try not to lose too much money in your endeavors.
Yeah.
Don't go completely bankrupt. And I never had to myself personally, luckily, but I just it just wasn't profitable, and it was too much work for not enough gain. And so
Was life
still had to dream.
when you were working as a service station guy and pumping gas, changing, checking oil? Was the quality of life better?
In my opinion, it was.
What made it better?
Oh, to me, and I was a great deal younger, of course. You didn't have the worries as I think even, and I know the older generation at the time probably had the worries that I wasn't aware of, definitely. But I know you felt safer, definitely from local crime. I'm not saying there was a lot of questions about international events that could happen too.
Yeah.
You still knew about that. The old hide you under the desk, the drill goes off and all this.
Such,
But it was still, it just seemed like and everybody, it appeared to be happier times for everyone, not just myself, but, like economically, you didn't make much money, but you had just about everything you wanted. You could go and buy. At that time, like a hot dog, for instance, was at the local store was 10 cents. You could.
Oh wow!
Yeah, they still had them even in 1972. Around here, 15 cents at the most. So you could have a couple of hot dogs and a drink, which is about a dime at the most.
The cheapest thing I remember from like childhood not childhood necessarily, but late teens. The cheapest thing I remember that I still buy today is gas. And gas, I remember one time I paid $1.05 per gallon, and I thought, this is pretty, this is pretty cheap, because $1.25 was like, that's when you were concerned, like, are we going to go to $2?
Let me tell you, I paid 15 cents a gallon.
That was
when I first got my license, and that was the year in 1972. That was before the gas embargo of 73, whenever you couldn't get gas, 73, 74. Luckily, I worked at a service station, or knew people that owned a service station, and I was able to drive. That's when you had the hot rod vehicles.
What were you driving then?
A 1969 Chevelle.
Oh, I think my grandpa had a Chevelle.
Yeah,
I think he talked about one.
I had a 69 Chevelle, and but they had these gas, before that, the embargo, they had these gas wars. All these service stations was pricing wars, and I have seen it. It ran around 30 cents a gallon, average. But then when they have these pricing wars, it get down below 20 cents. I have purchased it at 15 cents.
That's crazy.
You could take a $5 bill and a 5-gallon gas can. $1 bill and a 5-gallon gas can and fill it up.
And be good.
That
is crazy.
Yeah.
Well, it always interests me how you must see the world, like how people that have lived through a couple of generational cycles must see the world. When you walk around the world today, just out in your daily life, is it a world that you recognize?
No. I mean, in some ways it isn't, and I guess you would say, as far as just for instance, the news, the way it's presented now, there wasn't as much bias as it is now.
Yeah, it is pretty.
It's
depending on which program you watch, you get one side.
You got to pick a channel for whatever you feel like you want to watch. Your feelings in the political. It was just. I grew up in old Walter Cronkite days. This is how it is today, and all this stuff. I mean, but I think that influences. I think that's one of the worst influences on, especially the generations. And we had the Vietnam thing going on then. And that's when people were just starting to do the protesting.
Yeah.
Before that, you hardly ever heard anything about it. When I was a young boy, that's when you'd even no matter how old your parents would take you behind the woodshed, and there'd be no more protesting. But you heard a little definitely about it during the World War II, but it wasn't publicized, or you didn't see it as much on the news as you do things today. Just like what's going on
today.
Now.
Somebody gets upset, does something crazy in a parking lot. It's all over the news.
And it wasn't that's right. 24/7 news channels also. We didn't have that.
I've always kind of wondered. Like, at least in my adult life, since technology has been prevalent and reliable from an internet perspective, I always wondered, has all this stuff always been going on and we just didn't know about it because we couldn't communicate quickly enough? Right? Has there always been a crazy guy in the town next door doing XYZ, or did he just get there after the internet showed up? Which chicken and egg thing?
Yeah, whether you didn't hear about it or whether it just wasn't going on.
Yeah, it just wasn't going on.
That's exactly right.
My grandpa tells a story about how he drove into he accidentally drove into a riot sometime in the 50s or maybe the 60s. But he said, we didn't even know there was a riot going on because they lived way out in the country, a little town called Nices, South Carolina, a population of like, I don't know, my grandpa. That's about it. But he would have had no way to know that there was something going on 30 miles from him. He would just have no mechanism to know. So he accidentally drove into town, gets caught up in the ruckus, and then ends up getting arrested, you know. But it's interesting. I've only been through one, what I would call kind of like generational cycle, where I can now look at the world and go, it's not the same as when I was a kid by a long shot. Like, it's not even, like, the idea of not having a phone with you is pretty foreign for most people. And I didn't have much life without a phone, but at least like the first 20 years or so, 17, 20 years. And so I remember a world before phones. I remember kind of how like it was to sit down and behind the television and go, which of the 14 channels that we get on the bunny ears do you want to watch tonight? And that was some of the best options, because sometimes it was only 3 channels on bunny ears, you know? So I've always wondered, when people are, you know, and when they're several generations older than me, like my grandfather and even my great-grandma, who I got to meet for a little bit, what the world must look like. Like, it makes sense that it's difficult for me to like accept certain things about the current world. I'm like, maybe we shouldn't do this. This is a bad idea. Even though I'm pretty understanding about a lot of the newer stuff, is like, maybe we shouldn't do some of this. And I just think about like my grandpa or my great grandma, like, what do they think about this? Because it's not even in the spectrum of what they came up with. It's not even remote. You know, there was no internet. There was like in my grandmother's day, there was no way for a single person outside of maybe the president or another nation state figure to speak to as many people as I can on Twitter in 15 minutes.
That's right.
I can get on Twitter in 10 seconds and just blast out something, and it probably won't. But in theory, I could talk to 1 million people at once. There was no mechanism for them. So something like Twitter's must seem like witchcraft or extremely foreign, maybe even bad, you know. But talking about the $1 hot dog and the 30-cent gas or 10-cent hot dog, Bitcoin might be a part of the thing that reverses that process. If there's no, if at some point in the future they're talking about a $50 hot dog, and we're now talking about what, like a $3 or $4 hot dog or something like that for a single hot dog. If they're talking about a $50 hot dog, that means that there's no upper limit to what prices can do if inflation continues. And that means in turn that there's no upper limit for Bitcoin's price, because it's just fed by having an inelastic supply and people wanting to get out of weak things into strong things, or soft money into hard money. So I wonder if one day it'll be how many sats or how much of a Bitcoin does a hot dog cost, and it end up being about approximately 30 cents. That'd be interesting, or 10 cents. How's the business now? Is electric cars impacting you since they don't have exhaust? Or?
No, I've only seen maybe 1 or 2. We mainly do. Definitely, it's going to affect the exhaust work, but it's a custom exhaust. But we do in North Carolina. We have to have the emission testing still.
Yeah,
and so we do all emission testing, which goes hand in hand well with exhaust, because most of the components that are involved in passing emissions, especially the catalytic converter, which we keep in stock and we can change for people right away. You know, that's an attractive, you know, thing to offer to people, that you can fix it right there, not just do the inspections.
Yeah, you can inspect, find the problem.
But all that'll be by the wayside. You know, we do a great deal of inspections. I think we're, you know, floating around between 1 or 2 in the county area, as far as the volume that we do. But, you know, we still see some cars that come in there for that, you know, just electric vehicles, or at least and we see, of course, the hybrids, you know, they still do this. And you still have to do the safety inspection. You still got to stop. You still got to have brakes.
Yep.
We do a little bit of brake work, but, you know, it'll definitely affect it from, you know, have to change the entire business model if a higher percentage of local people
go to electric.
Go to electric. But I mean, technically, I don't think it's going to be feasible. Maybe not. I'd say in the distant future, maybe.
Yeah, I think Elon Musk said that if you wanted to just replace every gas car with an electric car, based on the average lifespan of a regular car, like how long somebody will keep it running, it take 35 years to do a 1-by-1 replacement across the globe. So not everybody's going to do that, and some cars are going to last longer, and people aren't going to want electric cars for this reason or that reason. So as long as they're still available, either secondhand market or from brand new dealerships, people are still going to buy gas cars in mass quantity for the foreseeable future.
Personally, I think the secondhand market is going to be a catastrophe because there's going to be individuals trading cars, and they're going to try to trade off the ones with the faulty batteries. I know you're supposed to get a battery life if you're going to buy one, but that probably won't happen.
Yeah.
And then it's going to be somebody gets it, and it's going to cost them $15,000-$20,000 to replace the battery in it.
Because that's the majority of the cost of the vehicle.
Yeah, that's the majority of the cost of the vehicle, and I think that's going to be a catastrophe right there.
I look at it like
used car, electric vehicles.
When I first got into the technology field as a job, I remember some of the metrics and capabilities of the early components that I worked on. And I've only been in the field in a civilian sense. I did it when I was in the Marine Corps, but in the civilian sense, I've been in the field since 2012. Mm-hmm. And in that time period, if I brought a machine from 2012 to now and said, this is a quality product, top of the line, ready to go, I would just get laughed out. And I wonder if in the future, battery technology and other similar technologies won't follow suit, where it's incrementally better. But when you're going through the initial phases of the increment itself, it seems like they're not getting all that much better. It's not until 20 years down the road do you look back and go, okay, those first couple additions were garbage. Yeah, but we're doing okay now.
Well, that's basically about how it is with everything.
Yeah, incremental improvement generally wins the day.
That's exactly right. So,
what do you think about Bitcoin? Like, what's your general thought on Bitcoin if somebody asked you in a sentence?
Well, first thing I wish I'd have got in when it was first conceived, when they first started it. Yeah. The amount of money wise, but I mean, I'm excited about it. I really think I like to study, and that gives me something to study on all crypto and Bitcoin. Yeah. Bitcoin's definitely being the first one, and it's definitely the most successful. And I mean, I know there's pros and cons with everything. There's good things and there's bad things, but I think there's more good things with Bitcoin. And number one, it's not controlled by any, I guess you could say, any government entity. Yep. I think that's definitely attractive from what I've seen. And that's the way that I hear that we have to be printing money and giving it away. I think it's attractive. And I like the idea of hopefully more people will trade it. And, I don't know exactly what the trading amount, if you start accepting Bitcoin versus credit cards, but the credit cards the usage is going up, and also are the fees of credit card. We take plastic there, and I've noticed during hard times, and I feel like it's difficult times now, you can always see the credit card use going up, and my bill for the usage of credit card and debit cards increasing. So I think that's I have seen that some work that you've done for the tax man.
Oh, Tom, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm definitely interested in probably at least giving an opportunity to accept.
Well, we can definitely
accept that as a.
We could definitely set you up.
And hopefully more people will, adapt to that.
Well, there's no minimum really. Mm-hmm. The thing you have to worry about with Bitcoin transfers or purchases per se is how much does it cost you to move the money. Mm-hmm. And there's ways around that too. There's like a layer 2, I guess you would call it. It's Bitcoin and it functions the exact same way, but there's a network called Lightning that allows you to move Bitcoin for basically free. You'll pay like one sat, like 1/100th million of a Bitcoin to move something sometimes, but it's very fast. So I could pay you over the Lightning Network with a wallet on my phone to a wallet on your phone, and it would be instantaneous. Like as soon as I hit the button, by the time you looked at your phone, it would be received, and you could spend that money instantaneously. With regular Bitcoin, you have potential fees to worry about, and you have a time window. Because remember earlier we were talking, that machine tries to find my miner over there tries to find the magic number every 10 minutes or within 10 minutes, give or take. So every 10 minutes, somebody wins. And when that 10-minute when that entity wins, that's when all the pending transactions that can fit in the current block of the blockchain, that's when they all get confirmed. So if I send you $1 in Bitcoin, we have to wait until the next person finds the magic number and says, yeah, I got the number. This is the block. Imagine the block is like a basket. It throws a bunch of transactions in the basket. Basically, whoever is willing to pay the highest fees will go in there. It's just supply and demand of the space. So that transaction will go in the basket and then get approved or get confirmed, and then you'll get it. So it could be 10 seconds, it could be 10 minutes, it could be 45 minutes. Nobody gets lucky in that 10-minute window. I'll show you after we get through some other parts what the blockchain actually looks like. You can see it in real time.
Well, I knew I bought Bitcoin, and I didn't buy all that I owned at one sit down at different times. I went up a little at a time.
Yep.
And I noticed it was very inexpensive to purchase it. I mean, just like a few cents. And I'd buy generally about $1,000 worth at a time, $1,000 to $2,000 worth. And so I figured it'd be pretty inexpensive to change between between people, not like 3 or 4%. It'd be like 0.03 or somewhere around that.
Is that what you found when you tried to sell? Or when you tried to exchange it? It was pretty cheap?
Yeah.
What were you doing? Like, do you remember the platform you were using? Was it like Coinbase or?
Robinhood.
Robinhood? Okay.
I used Robinhood.
We'll get to, I'll tell you why. What you're seeing is a bit of smoke and mirrors at Robinhood. And I'll show you how it works on the regular Bitcoin side. But Robinhood, Coinbase, those type of things, effectively what's happening is you're saying, I want to buy $1,000 worth of Bitcoin. And they're saying, okay, here's $1,000 worth of Bitcoin. But if Coinbase or Robinhood or whoever just decided to go away or close your account, you don't have any Bitcoin. You can't get to it. You can't access it. This is what Bitcoin's like primary purpose is to work around, because we can do it without Coinbase and without Robinhood. Now, buying it, you either have to find an entity that'll sell it to you without like being an entity that just sells Bitcoin like Robinhood. But let's say that you walked up to a guy on the street and said, hey, I'd like to buy any Bitcoin you had. And he said, sure, I'll sell it to you for today's market price. That's the only two entities you need. You don't need Coinbase. You don't need any of these other entities in between you. Just peer-to-peer, me and you. So,
yeah, that's one thing I definitely didn't understand about how that would work.
I'll show you.
Okay.
I'll show you. So how's the lawn care business?
It's pretty good. I don't have as lengthy of a story as my grandfather does. He's got a few.
No, it's okay. You got a whole different perspective there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's pretty good. I have a pretty strong passion for what I do. It was my first job when I was like 14.
Yeah.
And I was, on and off with it throughout high school because, I worked there in like the summers. And then, I just started going to school. I graduated high school with my high school diploma and my associate's degree.
You're in college now, though, right?
Yeah, I'm still in college. Yeah. So right now I'm pursuing my my bachelor's in business administration with a concentration in business studies and also a minor in computer science.
Which college is that?
UNCG.
UNCG? I knew a girl that went there for nursing. Seemed like a good school.
Oh, yeah. They have a really good nursing program. I have a few friends that are in the nursing program as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. They have a good business school too. I did my first year and a half on campus, and now I'm finishing up online so I can focus on the business. Yeah.
So do you run the business during the day and then just go to school in your off time?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah. How's business? It's pretty steady around this area, or?
Yeah, it's pretty steady around this area. When I travel to like other counties, I'm always thinking about, I'm like, wow, it'd probably be pretty hard to start a type of business that I run, and probably more rural parts of the state and things like that. But around here is pretty good, and I'm looking to just keep pushing and maybe branch out in the future.
How do you collect money, like when you go get your payment for lawn care?
Yeah, so that's what I've been thinking about this whole time that we're talking about like Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, because I accept cash and card payments, which debit. Ideally, the good thing about cash is that like my grandfather emphasizes, that there's no exchange rate or like a processing fee with cash. But when we, through card payments, you have to charge the processing fee. So that's a question I have, is how, cryptocurrency can benefit my business, especially when, for lawn service too, especially. If we're not accepting card payments, then we have to go looking around for the cash, looking under the mat, looking under the grill, wherever they leave it, whatever funny spot the customer comes up
Pick up
with.
the third rock.
Exactly, yeah. And me, having experience in the field and actually working, I've that's happened a lot. And I've heard stories from other friends I have working lawn care where the dog actually got the money that was taped off the door and ripped it up in the yard, and they had to explain that to the customer, and they had to hash that out.
That sounds terrible.
Yeah, so in an ideal world, the convenience of accepting credit card payments or debit card payments is, it's great, and it's so much easier for us. But the processing fees, and I imagine that's probably going to go up and stuff like that. So. Like my grandfather said, if more people start using cryptocurrencies, that'd probably be really beneficial for our company.
Yeah, I think the problem you run into, and I think every business is going to run into it for at least a little while, is even if you accept the larger versions of cryptocurrency, I mean, I wouldn't advise accepting anything but Bitcoin. But if you chose to accept Ethereum or some of these other coins, chances are you're not going to run into anybody who owns them who's also willing to spend them. And most of that is due to it's just too new. There's not enough people, and the people that are in it are there's two types of people in the Bitcoin world, at least. There's those who are like, I'm going to buy everything I can. I'm going to sell my sainted mother and every chair in my house to buy Bitcoin. I'll have nothing but a television or a laptop, and I don't care about anything else. And then the other type is, yeah, I've got some Bitcoin, and I'll keep buying Bitcoin, but I'm going to spend some of my Bitcoin and replace it because I need to help the ecosystem grow. I need to help more people accept it. Now, if you're in El Salvador or somewhere like that where Bitcoin's legal tender, you can pay your taxes in Bitcoin. The adoption rate down there is much higher. So you can go to a lot of different businesses and say, hey, give me XYZ, and I want to pay in Bitcoin. And they're happy to accept it.
It's funny because my dad's actually from El Salvador,
and
my whole that side of my family's from El Salvador, and I do have a lot of family down there, and they're always talking about, I don't know if you've heard of him, Nayib Bukele, the president.
Oh, yes. He's one of the favorite people of the Bitcoin community.
Yeah, and he gifted everybody, I don't remember how much it was.
I think it was $30.
$30 worth of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people don't really know what to do with it down there. Mm-hmm. And I know firsthand, like I said, because, I have a lot of family down there. So, they just kind of have it. And
yeah, the perspective I have is of Bitcoiners going down there to see how much Bitcoin they can operate with, right, or how big is the Bitcoin economy. But I know there's going to be a lot of people, and there probably is for a long period of time going to be a lot of people who are just like, what do I do with this? When that'll change is probably here in the next year or so, when Bitcoin's price presumably skyrockets after the halving event, and all of a sudden that $30 that they had is now $120. Right. And they're like, wait a second, is this how this always works? Because so far, I mean, when did he do it? 2018 or 2019? No.
No, I think
2021?
Yeah, it was more recent. Yeah, I think it was 2021. It wasn't that long ago.
So 2021-ish, he makes it legal as Tinder. And then for the next year or two, it's basically in the dump. It's going down from 30 or 60,000 to 15K. Everybody was probably looking at it like, why would you do this to us? But they don't understand some of the mechanics, and they haven't been through a bull market cycle. And neither have I, right? I didn't really start buying Bitcoin until 2020-ish, and I rode it from then all the way down to 15 while I was mining Bitcoin, and then all the way back up to where we are now at 64. It's like, people are like, oh, we've had a 5% drop in Bitcoin. I was like, I couldn't even tell you. Right. I was here at 15, and my first exposure to it, my first ever purchase, it was $2,000. So I've been around long enough where these little blips don't even affect me. Mm-hmm. But it's going to be difficult to get people to pay your lawn care in Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I'm just thinking about in the future, maybe I don't know if it's going to be beyond my time where
there'll be
it
a
becomes
point
popular.
There'll be a point at some time in the future in which people will refuse to be paid in anything but Bitcoin, because who wants the second best money?
It's like I was having this conversation with my grandfather the other day too, about cash. I don't know. I wonder if there will be a point in time where even cash might become obsolete.
Who wants it? It's hard to store. It's easily destroyed. It's constantly inflated and devalued. It's confiscatable. It's very anonymous if you want to make it that way.
Right.
But even from the anonymous standpoint, you have to go somewhere to spend it. You know, there's cameras everywhere, so it isn't that anonymous in reality. Cash has a lot of problems that weren't problems 50 years ago. The problems that we face today aren't really about whether cash is good or bad. It's a problem of who controls what. And we know, just like you were saying earlier with the media, we know the media is controlled, right? Americans are just waking up to the idea that both sides of the aisle, both forms of media, be it left-wing media, right-wing media, they're controlled by various entities, and in some cases by the same entity. The dollar is the exact same way. And we're starting to wake up to this idea. I mean, just look at, this is something I like to show people when they come on. I'm going to pull up, for those of you who can't see, I'm going to pull up what the fuck happened in 1971.com. 1971, the gold standard gets pulled out from underneath the dollar. Now the dollar is backed by like the faith and goodwill of the United States government versus being backed by an amount of gold that the United States government owned. And all this page is a bunch of charts of how things changed after 1971. But this is my favorite one, at least so far. And this is a chart showing the objectives to, rating the objectives to be essential or very important. And it shows that in 1970, 35% of people said being very well off financially was important. By the time you get to 2015, 80% of the population says being financially well off is important. Meanwhile, 68% of people said becoming an authority of my field was important in 1970, and now 60%, so a slight decline. 72% people said helping others who are in difficulty went down and then kind of bottomed out around 60% and came back up to 20 or 70% in 2015. The blue one, though, is my favorite, the blue line. So the green line states that being financially well off is the most important thing, right? 80% of people say that it's very important. 80% of people in 1970 said that developing a meaningful philosophy of life was very important. And in 2015, 45% people said that that was important. This in a single chart isn't a perfect example, but this entire website and my basic philosophy on life is that money is upstream of everything. Because your time, you go to work to make money, you're selling your time, you're selling your energy and your sweat for a resource. That resource would be money. Money is the most liquid thing. So it's the thing that you can trade for the most amount of goods. So you spend 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours, whatever your workday typically is, of your time and energy, and pour that into the dollar. Then somebody else says, well, we're going to pour some extra dollars out, devaluing your dollar. And that means they devalue your time. Now you've worked 10 hours for 8 hours worth of pay. And if you go back to your grandfather's timeline, a 10-cent hot dog versus a $5 hot dog, how many days would you have spent working for the energy it took to purchase one hot dog in, say, 1960 versus how much energy or how much time you have to work to purchase one hot dog today? Just given kind of his example. They're stealing time from you. And because you don't have time, because you don't have something solid to put your foot on, as from a hope perspective that the future is going to be better, because you know the dollar's not getting better, you subconsciously already know that. You don't have footing to put, you don't have anywhere to put your foot to say, this is where I'm going to make my stand. The only thing you can do now is say, I'm going to open a business and I'm going to work hard and I'm going to try to do the right thing. I'm going to pay my taxes. And in the end, I hope someone will take care of me. That's the best option you have. It doesn't matter how hard I work or you work or anybody works. No one outruns inflation. It's too easy to do. And every government in history who had the capability to do it has done it to death. From the Romans, if you look at an early Roman coin, the precious metals within that coin, 100%, 90%. You look at the fall of the Roman Empire, how many precious metals or what percentage of precious metals were in their coins then? Less than 5%, because they were filling it with shit metal that they could reproduce easily or they could gather easily, and just sprinkling in some of the actual precious metals that gave their money value. Well, gold is now, a store of value. People don't transact in gold most of the time. But if you wanted to, you now are presented with the same problems the dollar faces. It's hard to transport, not easy to destroy, but easy to lose, to get confiscated, to have stolen, all these different things. Whereas Bitcoin, because of its digital nature, and I'll show you guys later how you can keep it digital without allowing anybody to mess with it. Bitcoin isn't subject to confiscation. I mean, sure, somebody could beat you half to death until you give them your Bitcoin, but they can't come to your house and steal it. If you store it properly, they can't go online and steal it. It can't be debased. It can't be inflated. The only way to make Bitcoin is to mine it. And that's just because the rules say so. You can change the rules if you want, but you got to get 51% of us to agree to it. Otherwise, we'll just ignore you. So if you don't have 50% of the power, like literal energy and compute power in the case of nodes, if you don't have 51%, we don't care who you are. You don't make the rules. The majority have agreed to these rules, and the majority will continue, because agreeing to these rules keeps your Bitcoin value safe and keeps your Bitcoin from a technology perspective safe. You want to introduce something new, you want to try to limit or raise the limit of coins to 25 million because you didn't get one, you have to convince the rest of us to be okay with 25 million Bitcoin, and you're not, because we want the limit of 21 million Bitcoin. We want Bitcoin to be backed by energy and not by money or power from some entity like the government. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of game theory.
I haven't.
Game theory is the idea that you will always act in your own best interest, giving all other options or everything else being equal. So if you're walking down the street and there's a $100 bill on the side of the road, you're going to bend over and pick it up because it's in your best interest to do so. If you're walking down the street and there's a penny on the ground, you might walk right by because it might not be in your best interest to pick it up. Maybe it's not worth the stop. There might be traffic, so on and so forth. But in general, you'll always act in your best interest. And in the case of Bitcoin, if everyone acts in their own best interest, or the majority of people do, that means don't make any more Bitcoin. Don't change it to where, like Ethereum went through a change in the past. They used to be proof of work. You had to expend electricity to mine Ethereum, and they changed it to where if you just have enough money, you can buy a node, and that node now mines Ethereum. It doesn't actually do anything. It doesn't consume a lot of electricity or anything like that. It just costs $70,000. So you can play the game. You can be a rule maker if you got 70 grand. So now Ethereum's controlled by money, not by the production of energy. I just got back from West Texas, and in West Texas, they have cheap energy because of all the oil fields and natural gas. And we went to a place where they're pumping natural gas and oil directly out of the ground, just like you see in the movies. And the oil goes to 3 big tanks that's on the property, and the natural gas gets fed directly into generators. Those generators each power a couple of containers, shipping containers, each container filled with about 360 Bitcoin mining machines, and it runs around the clock. The person before, the person who owns that property, before the Bitcoin miners came in, they had to get rid of that energy, that natural gas energy, because they couldn't harvest it or sell it. It either wasn't pure enough, the prices weren't right, the economy wasn't working for it, whatever the case was. So they just lit it on fire. So you'd have flare gas, just a stick coming out of the ground with a flame on the end of it, just burning natural gas because there was no other option to use it. Bitcoin miners comes in and says, you don't have to do anything. Just connect us to the pipe and we'll do the rest. That's what gives Bitcoin kind of its energy backing. But to the original comment, the 1971 thing, I believe that everything is downstream of money. That your entire life is just a reaction to how much money you have. Now, there's other avenues you could look at spiritually, things like that. But I believe even those to a certain degree are downstream of money. If you weren't born in America, chances are you're not a Baptist, right? I know there's Baptists elsewhere, but when you say the word Baptist, not Protestant, if you say the word Baptist, chances are you were born somewhere in the United States mathematically. So your religion is tied to your geographical location. Your geographical location is typically tied to where you can afford to live. Because if you just had tons of money, you might just go move to your favorite place in the world and live there. So everything kind of becomes downstream of money. So your entire life is dictated by a group of people who decide how much money to throw into the system. And you're just at the receiving end of that. Joe Biden just yesterday announced a plan to raise capital gains tax to 41%, 44%. That means that if you make an investment and then sell that investment for a profit, they get 44% of that. Why on God's earth can you print money and you need 44% of the little bit of money I'm trying to make? This doesn't make any sense. You're robbing me fucking blind. And Bitcoin's, in my opinion, the answer. Everything else is a scam. Every other crypto is a scam, or every other crypto might have a use case, but there's no second best fire. There's no second best electricity. There's no second best thunderstorm. There's just aspects of nature that once you find the best one, that's the best one. And Bitcoin is like fire. It's like when we discovered Bitcoin, when Satoshi either invented, discovered, stumbled across Bitcoin, he stumbled across something that I believe in the next 1,000, 2,000 years will be the equivalent of the coming of Christ. That people will find hope in a future and one unanimous voice that at some point we will raise up against the powers that control the money, be it corporations or be it governments. The powers that control the money, that the human race collectively will raise up and be like, we don't need you anymore. And if you don't want to play this game with us, that's okay. We don't want to play the dollar game either. So we can go to war or you can join our team. Either way, nobody's using the dollar because either you kill us all or you use Bitcoin. I know that's an extreme point of view, but when you really get deep down the rabbit hole in Bitcoin, it takes you to a place in your whole. Today will be the start potentially of a new portion of your Bitcoin journey, and I can't tell you where it ends, but I can tell you if you keep going on it, the world doesn't look the same. That's what I can tell you. Anyway, I get off my soapbox. The 1971 thing. Everything gets worse in 1971 because we come off the gold standard. Bitcoin comes around 2009 as a hopeful replacement. Gold's not coming back. The United States is not going to ever pay for its sins by scraping up gold and getting out of debt. That's just not going to happen. We're going to print money until we die. But I wanted to show you guys what Bitcoin actually looks like by looking at the blockchain itself. Now, all this is a web page that talks to a computer, and that computer is one of the nodes that talks on the Bitcoin network, enforces the rules, confirms transactions, and all they've done is they've taken all that information from the node and given it a pretty picture. And now, for everybody that's listening, you can just go to mempool.space, and you'll see the same thing I'm seeing just based on whatever time that you're looking at it. But you see all these squares? Those are the blocks. And each block has a size, limited by Bitcoin's rule set. So if you want to put a transaction, if you want to send money or send Bitcoin from one entity to another, it has to be included in a block. And we can look at a block. So like this block was recently found. It was found 2 minutes ago by an organization that calls themselves Spider Pool. Oh, a new block just got found by somebody in the world by an organization called Foundry. So Foundry has a bunch of mining machines just like this. They're the biggest in the world. And Foundry, one of the mining machines amongst Foundry's 100,000 mining machines or whatever it is that they have, found a block. It found the magic number. It rolled the dice enough to find the number that worked. But you can look back through the history. I can just scroll over and you can see who's finding the blocks. It's Foundry, Ant Pool, another big miner, Brains Pool, one of the original miners, F2 Pool, met them at a conference, Mara Pool, a big mining pool. So you can keep going back. And you can go far enough back where you see the first block and there's no transactions in it because the only person who knew Bitcoin even existed, realistically, was Satoshi. And he wasn't sending Bitcoin to anyone. He didn't have any Bitcoin. The first 50 Bitcoin came out when the first block was found. So you can keep just scrolling back and finding, transactions. And you can go back to the first transaction that Satoshi sent that guy I was telling you about earlier, Hal Finney. You can go back and look at it. You can see the addresses. You can see how much Bitcoin is in the addresses. For reference, Satoshi has about 1 million Bitcoin. It's never moved. Whoever Satoshi is either has balls of steel and just won't sell it, doesn't care because he's like the 44th richest person on the planet in dollar terms. Either he just doesn't care or he lost the keys. He lost the password and he can't get it back. Or he's dead. Any of that's possible. Plus probably 1,000 other possibilities. But you can watch it. You can watch it go on as long as you want. And right now, everybody's trying to guess the magic number for this block. And you can see we had a really quick succession of blocks here. We had a block found 30 minutes ago. Remember, the average we want is 10 minutes. So we had a block found 30 minutes ago, and then one 4 minutes ago, and then 3 minutes ago, and then 2 minutes ago. Because they're just rolling dice, and sometimes you get lucky. Now, that begs the question. What happens if more people join the Bitcoin mining community and more people are rolling the dice? Won't that mean that you'll find the answer faster and then you'll find blocks faster than every 10 minutes? And that will kind of circumvent one of Bitcoin's core rules? And the answer is correct. And the answer is yes. But there's a kicker. Bitcoin's got a twist. Bitcoin has this thing called a difficulty adjustment. Now, we talked about the halving. This isn't about payout. This is about, I'm going to use the dice again. Remember I said, I want you to roll a number under 10. And I've got 5 dice in my hand. So I want you to roll 5 dice. And the sum of the dice that you roll, I want to be less than 10. That's hard to do. But I could also make it 5. But the sum of the dice has to be 5 or less. So that means you got to roll 5 ones. It's probably, I mean, statistically, it might be slightly or roughly the same as rolling less than a 10 with 5 dice, because you're still just rolling 1 or 5 times the same number, but you get the point. What Bitcoin does is it just keeps lowering that number. If too many people are guessing and the average over 2 weeks, a 2-week period, is 9.5 minutes, not 10 minutes, Bitcoin will automatically lower the number, making it harder for you to guess it, making your machines make less money every day, and therefore you need to increase efficiency in order to compensate. But what if we mine really slowly and we don't find a block every 10 minutes on average? Like right now we're running at, oh my God, it's on fire. Right now we're running at 7.6 minutes average over the past 2 weeks. So you can tell Bitcoin's going to increase its difficulty all on its own with no central party controlling it. It's all just built into the rule set. It's going to increase its difficulty 6.75% unless the average goes down in the next 12 days. So every 2 weeks, there's a difficulty adjustment, and it can make Bitcoin mining harder or easier, depending on what the average time is. So the average time right now, like I said, is 7.6 minutes, but what if it was 10.5? Bitcoin would make it easier to guess the number by making the number you have to guess bigger. So you can kind of see like the progress there as to how difficulty adjustments are going. But you see an example of it. We didn't find a block for 30 minutes, and then 4 minutes ago, we found 3. So because it's just chance. Nobody has the ability to game the system. There's no central banker. There's no gobbledygook. There's no smoke and mirrors. There's no passwords and protections. It's just math. That's it. That being said, let me walk you through some more of the Bitcoin ecosystem. So this is a block, right? A block contains transactions. Well, what does a transaction look like? Well, this shows you, this little square here, shows you different transactions that are contained in the current block. So the block that they're trying to guess, that everybody's trying to guess the number for, these are the transactions that are piling into it. And the only way they get in here is being willing to pay a fee big enough to get in. We can only fit so many transactions in a block. So if your fee doesn't put you in, say, the top 2,000 transactions or whatever it is, you're not getting in. So right now, this block has, we can barely see it, but it has about 4,000 transactions in it. But if there were 10,000 transactions in it, there would still be about 4,000 transactions in the block, but the fees for those transactions would be much higher. The night of the halving, fees actually got so high because of some other things that were going on in the Bitcoin world, where you might pay $100 to move $100 in fees. Right now, you'll pay a couple bucks, right? Probably about somewhere between $3 to $3.50 per transaction. But it's pretty busy right now. And Bitcoin wasn't really made to buy coffee, right? It was meant to be the underpinning of a larger financial structure. So that's kind of what a block looks like. Transactions come in and out, and as soon as the block is found, whatever transactions in there are confirmed. If they're appropriate, they're confirmed. The fees are taken from the wallets as appropriate. The fees are paid out to the miners. So I make not only a little bit based on my reward, but I also make a little bit in fees every day. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. And you can see all the transactions dollar amounts. So like somebody sent $75. Somebody sent $4,000, $6,000, 40,000. Sometimes you'll see a couple million pop up over here pretty quickly. But if we want to go look at those transactions, we could look at them. We could look at the wallets that contain those Bitcoin. I just can't tell you who owns it. There's a big mystery right now. Somebody's buying 100 Bitcoin a day and putting it into the same wallet every day, like clockwork. It doesn't matter what the price is. They're buying 100 Bitcoins a day, and they have been since last November. So they're up a couple $1 billion right now in terms of how much Bitcoin they own, and nobody has a single clue who it is. We just see it. We don't know who it is. Where Robinhood, like you were saying earlier, we can't see who's buying Bitcoin in Robinhood, but we can see or Robinhood's overall wallet. So we might be able to tell, like, oh, that's Robinhood's wallet because Robinhood said this is where I keep my Bitcoin. But we can't see that you own a portion of it, right?
So whenever you, for instance, sign on to Robinhood or whatever, just as a purchaser of it, whenever you sign on to one of these companies that, I forgot the name of it, but anyway, a trader.
They're like an exchange or something.
Exchanger, yeah. Are you assigned a number or something that's embedded in that?
Not in Bitcoin's native world.
Okay.
Within the company, I'm sure you have some type of number and there's an amount of Bitcoin associated with you. But the old adage goes in the Bitcoin world, if it's not your keys, it's not your coins. And I'll teach you about
That's where I have
keys.
a problem with it. How does the Bitcoin itself, or say if I own one Bitcoin, how does the blockchain or the blocks of that Bitcoin know that I own that one Bitcoin?
It doesn't. It just knows that an address does, but it doesn't know who you are.
Okay, an address does.
An address, a wallet address. So like, for instance, on my phone, I have and I don't even know if it's the best wallet. I haven't really looked around at the current wallets, but I have a wallet called Blue Wallet. And all Blue Wallet is, I'll show it to you here on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an app. You can download it for iPhone, Android, whatever. There's a bunch of different wallets out there.
That's what I was going to use for a wallet. That's what I.
Yep, that's a different type of wallet. Yep, I'll tell you about that one.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
But this, I call this one like a hot wallet, because this wallet I can readily spend and receive Bitcoin on without having to dig anything up. Right? If I want to spend off of a cold wallet, which is what you have there, a Ledger, there's a few things I have to do to get it to work first.
Yeah.
But in the case of a hot wallet, like my son has a little hot wallet here. There we go. So my son has $19 or so in Bitcoin, right? I can change. I think I can change how it's displayed. Yeah, so he has that much Bitcoin, 0.0 something. This wallet is just a set of addresses in reality. So if I want to receive Bitcoin on his wallet, say receive, and it's hard to see, but there is a line down here of a bunch of characters.
Mm-hmm.
That's a Bitcoin wallet address.
Okay.
The Bitcoin network natively understands it. It doesn't know where it is in the world. It doesn't know who's behind it. It doesn't even know if it's on a phone or if it's on a computer. It has no idea. But it knows that that's a value it can use as an address. This QR code is just a picture representation.
So basically now, I mean, if I own Bitcoin at the moment and it's on, say, Robinhood, Robinhood would be my wallet.
Yes,
Okay.
in a sense.
In a sense.
The difference is that some entities like Robinhood or Coinbase may or may not let you actually move your Bitcoin off of that platform
Okay.
onto, say, your own wallet or to your ledger.
That's where I had problems at trying to understand how to get it to my ledger.
Yeah, and so
And they may not even
allow it.
Okay.
I know Coinbase generally does, but
Okay.
somebody like Robinhood might not. I'm not
Gotcha.
sure. But if you skip those guys,
Okay.
there's nobody to stop you, right? Because all you have to do is give Bitcoin valid information, and it will respond within the rule set. So if I tell Bitcoin this is an address, and then you use maybe another wallet like this one, you would hit, instead of the receive, you would hit the send. And the send asks you how much. So I might say, let's say $10. So I would say send $10, and it automatically converts that to Bitcoin for me as far as how much Bitcoin that is. And then an address. And I can hit the scan button, and it opens the camera on my phone. So imagine that there's another person sitting there with that little picture ready to receive. You would use your phone and say scan, and it would save that address, populate it in here where it says address, and you hit next and accept the fees, which right now would be that much, and hit send, and your transaction would end up as one of these little blocks.
Okay.
Inside of a block, waiting for a miner to find it. And when a miner finds it, everybody agrees that this account had X Bitcoin, is now sending to that account that needs X Bitcoin. And for all of history, that transaction will have been considered complete. And I will now have whatever Bitcoin you sent me, and I can move on my merry way. No Coinbase, no Robinhood, no government, no bank, no ID, no name, no email, no nothing. So imagine a scenario where you need to There's a couple scenarios I'm sure that people imagine, but let's just go with the easy one. Imagine the scenario: you need to leave the country, and you want to take your wealth with you. Well, you need permission from probably many people. Your bank, maybe the government, depending on how much money you're leaving with. Maybe the government that you're going to, depending on how much money you're coming in. Is there taxation? Is there, all these loopholes? But if I have a Bitcoin wallet, I don't need any of that. I put all my money in Bitcoin and I'm out. We'll see you later. And somebody will say, what if you lose your phone? Or what if you don't have your phone? Or what if they break your phone? Or you're not allowed to take your phone? Well, this gets to the deepest layer of Bitcoin from a regular user's perspective. And that's a cold wallet. All a cold wallet is the exact same thing I just showed you. Different form factor, different screen, but it does the same function. Receive and send Bitcoin. But the fundamental thing you need to understand about it is what protects Bitcoin. Why can't somebody just say, I have a Bitcoin account. I'm looking at this other person's Bitcoin account, which we can do. We can look up an address and see how much Bitcoin is in it. Why can't I just say, I want to take the Bitcoin out of that? What's going to stop me? And what's going to stop you is the rule of Bitcoin is you can deposit to any account you want. But the only way to send out of an account, the only way to send money is to either have already given your wallet a set of password or to enter a password before you send the Bitcoin out. And passwords aren't that big of a deal. People crack them all the time. But Bitcoin's passwords are slightly different because like when you log into your computer, you might have a single password. Like say your password is a password, right? You type in the word password and off you go. That's only one word. It's pretty easy to guess. But what if it was 12 words? What if it was 24 words?
Oh, yeah.
What if those words were pseudo-random and you didn't get to pick them? Yeah. Those type of things. Now it becomes infinitely harder to guess. Like, for instance, there's more stars in the observable galaxy, or there's less stars in the observable galaxy than there are. Let me back up. It's statistically more likely for you to select a single atom somewhere in the known universe that I've picked out already. You're statistically more likely to pick out the same atom than I do than you are to guess a Bitcoin 24-word password.
Yes, for instance, there.
Yeah.
I created I didn't really know what I was doing, but I was instructed to do that, to create a set of passwords.
You did it. So,
yeah.
So now if you lose your phone, like if I open up my Blue Wallet again, you'll see on the main page, like if I just opened it up, there's a little plus icon.
Okay.
What if I wanted to create a new wallet? So I'm going to create a new wallet. I'm going to hit the plus. And down here, you see it says import wallet. If I hit import wallet, it says, tell me your 12 or 24 words. So in principle, you could take all the wealth that you have, pour it into Bitcoin, and move it to a cold wallet. As long as you have those words, you could throw that cold wallet in the trash because it doesn't matter. You get to a computer, you get to a phone, you get to another wallet, and you tell it those 24 words, and now you have access to your wealth again. So when it comes time to leave the country, you can leave the country nude. As long as you can remember 12 or 24 words, you take your wealth with you wherever you go, and nobody can stop you. They can try to stop you, but if you have the willpower, if you really want to keep it, nobody can stop you. And if you take that to your grave, your Bitcoin is lost forever. Nobody can recover it. There's approximately 4 or 5 million coins today, not including Satoshi's coins, that are considered lost. That in the past, when Bitcoin was much cheaper, 10 cents a coin, and people were mining them multiple coins a day, people were careless with them. And so people threw them away with old laptops because the password was on the laptop. Or, they like one guy bought 2 pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin. There was no consideration for these coins, right? Like people just threw them around. So people lost them. They lost their passwords. So, but today we understand these things have value. And if you can remember these words, nobody can take that value from you. And if the government wants to ban it, go ahead, because you still can't take it. You can ban guns and you can come get them. It's going to be an expensive endeavor, both physically and financially. You can ban Bitcoin and you can come get it. But unless a person decides to give it to you, it doesn't matter what you do to them. You'll never get it. You can't. Unless you can guess the password, which again is so unlikely that the best computers in the world today would take hundreds of thousands of years doing nothing but trying to crack a password. The best computers of tomorrow might do better, but just like everything else, incremental improvement. Bitcoin will adopt new encryption technologies. It'll adopt new defense mechanisms against computers of the future, or so one would believe. You know, that's the idea that we have as we move forward, and things like quantum computing and things like that get involved. But that's the realest deal about Bitcoin is if somebody helps you, or if you on your own put your Bitcoin onto a wallet, and that wallet, you have the passwords for it, it doesn't matter what happens to the wallet. As long as you can keep a hold of those passwords, you're good. Somebody can help you recover it, or, you know, in the event that you need to create it, somebody can help you create it. But under no circumstances, zero, in the Bitcoin world, there is not a situation in which somebody says, give me your 12 or 24 word password, and it's a good idea, unless that person is somebody you specifically trust and that's helping you recover funds, and you've worked with them before. It's not like I met this guy online, he said he'll help me out, and he seems smart and trustworthy. No, it better be your mother.
Yeah.
You know, it better be somebody very close to you that even if they were to betray you, you'd still love them. That type of close, you know. But anyway, I could really go down a deep rabbit hole when it comes to Bitcoin ideas. But I wanted to continue to show you guys some of the other stuff. So the Bitcoin world, like I said, it's a world that seems very clouded, but it's actually a world that's very clear. You just have to know where to look. You can come to bitcoin.org. You can go to that site and you can play around with all the different resources and learn about different types of wallets. And it's an educational place to be and a reasonably trustworthy source of information. But if you're really the type that you want to see what it's actually doing, you want to read the code, like maybe you want to actually read the code, go to GitHub. Right here is the Bitcoin code. Some of this code is still the exact code that Satoshi himself wrote before anybody knew Bitcoin was ever going to be a thing. You can come and look at every single line of code that Bitcoin natively interacts with. Now, if you talk about wallets, you talk about all these external entities, they may or may not show you the code. But Bitcoin in its core process, how it actually functions, it's clear and concise if you know how to read it. It's just like the Constitution. It's written in cursive. A lot of people can't read cursive. But if you can read cursive, it's clear and concise as to what it wants to do. So you can come here and you can look at it, and you can participate on forums. You can do all manner of things, communicate with the Bitcoin community. None of us are really hard to find. You just got to come and look. But generally speaking, we're very open, very cool people to deal with. Let's take a look at this. So this is just Twitter. And all I have here is my little Twitter feed for my podcast pulled up. But what I like to do is just kind of scroll through here and show you some of the people that exist inside the Bitcoin community so you can see it's not all these weird, scammy crypto dudes. If you get into core Bitcoin communities, they like meat. They like sunshine. They want to have lots of children. They think that producing energy is a good thing. They mostly like farming. They mostly like, animal husbandry and raising animals. They're very, what's the word I'm looking for? They're very homesteady. Right, as a general rule of thumb, you'll find a positive outlook on that type of life within the Bitcoin community. And so, if we just kind of scroll through here, I don't know what we're going to find. It's obviously a crapshoot because it's Twitter and I don't control the feed here. But let's see if we can find. Actually, can I go to my other account that's more Bitcoiny? Yeah, here we go. This is my Bitcoin mining account. This one's super Bitcoiny. So let's see if we can find somebody. Oh, there's Andrew Tate, not a great example. Let's see. What is this? So less than 2 hours ago on the auction for the buy Bitcoin sign, the highest current bid is 4.1 Bitcoin. So this was a sign that was held up behind the Treasury Secretary. What's her name? Janet Yellen?
Yeah.
It was held up behind her at one of her meetings about 4 or 5 years ago or so. This guy dressed up like the Monopoly dude and then held up this sign behind her, and it just says buy Bitcoin, and now they're auctioning off the original notepad, and so it's going for 4.1 Bitcoin. That means that's what's that, $240,000 or something like that for that piece of history. Let's see what else we got here. There was a big arrest today. Just a little Bitcoin news for you. There was a big arrest today. A group that runs a wallet called the Samurai Wallet. They have a function that allows you to mix your Bitcoin with other people's Bitcoin, and at the end of it, you receive Bitcoin back. The problem is it makes it very difficult to trace where the Bitcoin comes from and where it goes to. So if you like Bitcoin, but you don't want the government for taxation purposes or other purposes knowing that you own it, you can try to run it through a service like this. And although the government doesn't call Bitcoin money, they charge this company with money laundering because they're mixing this Bitcoin. So it's still kind of a gray area in that sense. But these are the things that happen. And this is probably part of the reason why Bitcoin's price dumped today from 67,000 to 64, plus Biden's announcement that he might have like a 40+% tax on capital gains. Mm-hmm. But just a little of the Bitcoin world. Let's see what else we got here. U.S. Department of Justice arrests popular Bitcoin mixer, Samurai Wallet, founders and CEO charged with money laundering. Yeah, I was just saying earlier. This guy, Robert Breedlove, super smart guy, runs a great podcast. Looks like he's posting up a few things. I mean, obviously, Bitcoiners like to be fruitful, let's say. Department of Transportation announces new rule for all airlines requiring automatic cash refunds and flights are canceled, delayed, or if luggage is lost. Not really related to Bitcoin, just something. There's the Bitcoin guy. That's the guy who held up the sign. Mm-hmm. But my point here, kind of scrolling through this, is that the Bitcoin community, the real one, we hope for a better future. We hope for a future like I don't spend any of the Bitcoin that I mine. I mean, outside of what I have to pay electricity, because it's not for me. It's for my kids. It's for a future where relying on inflation and hope are gone. I mean, imagine a single mom, right, that doesn't make a lot of money. It's got 3 kids, deadbeat husband or dad, whatever it is. The father's just not around. She's working 2-3 jobs trying to support these kids and take them to school. She didn't have any hope. There's no escape for her. Unless she gets real lucky, just statistically, it's unlikely that financially things are going to get better for her. Statistically, they're going to get worse. And it's because the dollar is built in such a way that makes it worse over time. And it will continue to do so. So for her, Bitcoin doesn't seem like a big deal. The thing I want to do with the podcast is let her know, like, it might be a big deal. It might help you. But what we have outside of that is not going to. There's no option for it to do so. And that's not sexy. It's not interesting. It's not exciting. But if you're really in a position where you don't feel like there's hope, and then you see hope in the form of something that saves your energy over time, because that's basically what Bitcoin does. It saves energy over time. Then maybe your viewpoints will change. Maybe you'll meet new people. You'll get into different types of activities and education. And then just because you know that there's hope, then maybe your life gets better. Maybe it gets better financially too because Bitcoin goes up. But without hope for a person like that, what do? You're like, oh, I'm sorry, or oh, the church brings you some food. That's all well and dandy, but it doesn't do anything. It's a short-term fix to a long-term problem. Mm-hmm. Bitcoin might be the long-term fix. In your world, computer science, in your college, you're going to learn about all manner of things regarding computer science. But what they're not going to teach you about is money. They're not going to teach you about money at all. And when you get into Bitcoin, you get code and you get money. And you get money to write code. So it's like a beautiful world for somebody who's up and coming, trying to get into the computer space. I mean, it's a great place to be. I went into crypto as a job and fell flat on my face because I realized the crypto people are not my people. They take very expensive trips. We went on a company meetup, and it was in the wine vineyards of Northern California. And the hotel we stayed in was $3,500 a night per room. And the car that they gave us as like a benefit of staying in the hotel, you got a complimentary Cadillac, 2024, brand new. You can have it for 6 hours. I don't know how to interact with people from the vineyards of California. They aren't my people. I don't know how to interact with people who think $3,500 for a hotel room a night is okay. I know how to interact with people who want to raise chickens. I know how to interact with people who catch catfish. I know how to interact with blue-collar workers. These are the people that I come from. And the problem is that the crypto people overshadow the Bitcoin people in a large part because there's a lot more of them. And the Bitcoin people who are like salt of the earth, a lot of them blue-collar, a lot of them regular workaday folks, they get overshadowed because they aren't as loud, they aren't as big as these crypto people. They get bad names, applied to them. And I realized in the crypto world that I wasn't going to survive. I wasn't going to. But when I came to the Bitcoin world, because I work for a Bitcoin only company now, when I came to the Bitcoin world, it was completely opposite. They're trying to save money. They care about things like responsibility, accountability, doing the right thing because it's the right thing. And I was like, oh shit, I was right. But now it's like, I actually have to do things. I actually have to actually work and not just sit around and pretend like I'm working. I have to work. I have to be accountable for my actions. I have to practice my own personal self-responsibility within the job scope. It's a completely different mindset. And when you work on either side of those entities, you figure it out pretty quick. I think as a computer science major, especially in business, emerging technologies like Bitcoin are going to be at the forefront of the business world, and the code version of Bitcoin is going to be at the forefront of any successful business, in my opinion, in the next 10 to 20 years. Because when the dollar's shit, somebody's written really good code for a Bitcoin application, a Bitcoin wallet, whatever it may be, people are going to want to talk to you. Just like you guys are here talking to me today because I'm talking about Bitcoin. If I said, hey, you want to come over and talk about chickens, you might not have been as eager to come over. But it's something that is new. It's something that you might care about. After we get off the podcast, I'll show you a video. I can't show you while we're on because the audio will get triggered, or I'll get copyrighted by YouTube or whatnot. But I'll show you a video that envisions a Bitcoin future, what it might look like. And it is like, oh, you mean like a good place? Like not a place that's, what's the word, where everything's perfect?
Utopia?
Yeah, it's not a utopia. It's just a place of freedom. Because think about it. Yeah, Wayne, I'm assuming that in your time you've bought a house or two. Mm-hmm. The first house you bought, I don't know if you bought more than one, but the first house you bought, do you mind telling us how much you paid for it?
Yeah, first house I bought was a rental house. I bought it. I still live in the same house I was born in, actually.
Oh, wow.
Kind of unique.
Yeah.
But first house I bought was rental houses in like 84, I guess, mid 80s for $22,500.
Do you know roughly what that house might be worth today?
Yeah, I've had offers to buy it.
Yeah. You don't have to tell us if you don't want to, but
I still have it. I'd say I don't mind. Probably about $285,000, maybe $300,000.
So if it's $300,000, give or take, and you bought it for 22, you said?
22.
So that means a person that would have been renting that house the year that you bought it would have been paying somewhere around whatever the rent would be for a $22,000 house. Mm-hmm. If a person today wanted to rent that house and it's a $300,000 house, you still have to cover the mortgage. I know that you might own it now, but under normal circumstances, you would have to cover the mortgage plus insurance and taxes and whatever else. That means that their rent is astronomically higher than it was when you bought it. I mean, on a level that doesn't even make sense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The reason for that is gold and real estate are probably the two biggest investment vehicles that a regular person's going to try to use. Like if they're going to get into investing, they might do stocks, but everybody talks about rental homes, and nobody's really that upset about maybe owning some gold. So if we make homes the primary investment vehicle for a lot of reasons, both taxes and for, just general monthly income, that means that the person who actually needs to use it has to pay out the eyes. Whereas in a Bitcoin world, real estate is no longer an investment because you can build more real estate. Why would you want the second best investment? If you know that Bitcoin's value is going to go up because of the halving, because of the demand, because of the limited supply, if you know Bitcoin's going to go up, why would you buy a house and invest in a house? You might buy a house to live in, but why would you invest in one? You probably wouldn't, or at least not on average, you wouldn't. That means that housing prices would see a reasonable fall due to the fact that the demand for those houses had gone down. Now there's just as many renters as there is houses, instead of there being almost no houses because people are hanging on to them for investment purposes, and too many renters. So if housing becomes a commodity that we can afford, that means everybody can generally afford a house of reasonable standards. And then they only buy the stuff that they actually need. Because why would you spend your Bitcoin that's going to be worth more later on Taco Bell and Teletubbies? You wouldn't. At least not if you're a reasonable person. You'd save it. And that makes Bitcoin's value go up, makes the value of everything else go down. It becomes this weird cycle where you're like, could everything become not free, but priced in a way in which pretty much everyone could afford what they need while still having an abundance of savings? And the answer is, on the Bitcoin standard, it's possible. It's totally possible. I don't know. I get on a soapbox with this one. What do you guys think, though? How can we influence our community? How can we make this place better with or without Bitcoin? What's wrong around here?
I feel like people just need to realize that, the future is in like cryptocurrency and new things. And we've been doing the same thing for so long. And it's, eventually we have to try something new in order for new things to happen.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to change if you don't try something new. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again and it keeps failing, then, I think that's like the definition of insanity, really.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, eventually we just have to try something new and, at least give it a chance.
Let's back up what you just said with doing the same thing over and over again. When you were a young man, were there nickel and dime stores?
Oh, yeah.
I remember my grandparents occasionally talking about a nickel and dime store, and my wife, up until maybe a couple of years ago, would occasionally talk about a dollar store. But now the dollar stores are $1.25 stores or $5 stores. So it's like we've gone from nickel and dime to dollar and from dollar to $5. And we're still arguing over money. It's like something we're missing. We're doing the same thing again. We've made the numbers bigger. So yeah, same thing over and over again.
Were they actually called like nickel and dime stores, or was that just like a general term?
No, I think dime store was a term.
Dime store.
Yeah, I think I've seen that.
Wow, that's insane to think about. I didn't know that.
Yeah, nickel and dime store.
Which I've grown up like with Dollar Tree and Dollar General.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that, like in the future, if that will go obsolete as well. Like
it'll just be the $5 store, but they'll call it Dollar General.
And then like a generation or two after me, they won't even know that existed. That's crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, currency. We Americans think the currency like, I want cold hard cash, the all American dollar. It's like you don't actually know what you're saying,
right?
Because this is a new invention. The all American dollar isn't that old. I mean, you can go back across a lot of different civilizations and look at how inflation ruined them, and it's a repeating cycle.
Yeah. I was having kind of a similar conversation with my grandfather the other day as well. He was telling me how when he first started his businesses, he had a butcher shop. And, since he's been around for a lot longer, when first started being a thing, he had to take a gamble by taking credit because it was new. Nobody really knew much about it. And,
plastics, sort of credit cards.
Yeah, like credit cards. It was new, and he didn't know if like what'd you say, Paul, about they had to make out a label or something like that?
Well, no, of course there wasn't any internet transfer back then.
Yeah, you had to do the old like. I remember seeing those as a kid. Yeah.
Yeah, we used them, and then we'd take the hard copy. It was 2 carbons. Copies in a hard copy, and we'd take a hard copy to the bank and make a deposit with our cash that we had. So it took a while to verify that the credit card wasn't stolen, or
you didn't know what it was.
You didn't know. No, you took a chance, and I was using that example of how that became at the Willow Tree Muffler Center. Well, we're doing over 50% of the business on plastic.
Yeah, I don't carry cash at all. Oh, like maybe $10, maybe.
Yeah, so many people don't even carry any cash.
No, I couldn't tell you what it's like to balance a checkbook.
But back then, we it was about 99% cash versus 1% plastic. And I'm talking about 40 years ago, approximately 40 something. So, but anyway, we've evolved a great deal, and I was using that example of why I wanted him to be interested in Bitcoin.
Yeah. I think you're going to see a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
Between the two. Well, think about how people felt about credit back then. I saw a commercial for McDonald's, and people were like, oh, you're going to pull out your credit card, Mr. Richie Rich? And this is like McDonald's in the early 90s or whatever, whenever credit cards first kind of became a thing. And people were very skeptical. Like, why would you want to do that? Cold cash is much easier. Just count it right here. I don't have to go to the bank or call for a transfer number or whatever. This is very difficult. Bitcoin's in the same category right now. If you look at Bitcoin's growth and compare it to the growth of the internet, we're growing faster than the internet was, but we're still in the first decade of the internet. If you imagine the internet kind of like came became something the average person might access around 1993, 1994, that means that we're at 2004 internet. 2004 internet, like in the form of Bitcoin, if we want to compare it, 2004 internet was like when prior to MySpace. And I know that, what are you, 20, you said, right?
Yeah, I'm 20.
Was MySpace even a thing for you at any point?
You know, when I was, for my first memories, like as a child, I, vaguely remember my parents maybe talking about it, but that's about it. I've never had any experience on it or anything like that.
So imagine Bitcoin in 20 years just being your lifetime. And instead of MySpace, it's everything and more that every other social media app is combined. That's kind of how Bitcoin ends up. I have an idea, though. So part of my podcast is community-based, and I want to have my local politicians in here. Not necessarily always talk about Bitcoin, but it'll always be there. But I want to have my local politicians in. I want to have my local school leaders in. I want to have my local business leaders in. But I always want to find a way to tie what I do to what you do. And sometimes that's not easy because Bitcoin is largely a digital space where most of the people I'm going to meet are largely a physical space thing. But I have an idea specifically for you guys. You heard me run the miner earlier. It never really got all the way cranked up before we unplugged it, but I could make sure that it got loud enough. And I have a general understanding of how mufflers work. You see where I'm going? I'd like to come to your shop one day with a camera, podcast equipment, maybe do an episode 2 at your shop. Just talk more about your shop, more about your life. I won't ramble as much. But at the end, we'll make a little video, and we'll see if we can't mount, custom built by you guys, assuming you'd be willing to do it, a small dual exhaust on the exhaust port of this miner. Because what's going to happen is the engine, and this is my assumption, right? I was thinking about this earlier today. The engine, when the pistons move and the camshaft rotates or whatnot, you have this thump, 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 thump of the constant cyclical explosions. But that just has a woo constant noise. So what happens if you put an exhaust on it? It's probably just going to hum. But what if I can play with it and make that fan go up and down in speed and adjust the sound quickly? What would that sound like flowing through like a set of old rusty Flowmasters off of El Camino or something? Like what would that sound like? And would it be a fun little video? Would it give us a little bit to say, hey, we love Willow Tree. If you're in the Bitcoin world, if you're in the Alamance County, let's get down to Willow Tree. If you need your grass cut, let's get over to Willow Tree. Here's what some of these guys can do. Let me show you what we got going on. Do a thing like that. And hook a muffler up to it. What do you think? Would you be willing to entertain it?
Yeah, it'd be possible.
It'd be fun?
Yeah.
And I don't know what type of muffler you'd put on there or how long it would be or what type of... It wouldn't really matter because I would do it like in a Jeremy Clarkson Top Gear style. Like, here we have a V8 motor and we're going to connect, this, and then jump over to the Bitcoin miner and talk about its exhaust. And people always complain they're too loud and they put off a lot of heat. And so like, let's fix that. What do you do when something's too loud? You put an exhaust on it. Let's put a set of Flowmasters on there and just make it sound better. And we'd be the first people to ever put a set of mufflers on a Bitcoin miner. I can promise you that.
Oh yeah.
I got a gun store I'm going to be interviewing soon. You can only imagine what we're going to do when it's time to tie Bitcoin mining to a gun store. But if you guys be open to it, we could do it. I'd bring the miner up there so you get some dimensions off of it. What I envision is like a cylinder of metal just connecting to the exhaust port, because the exhaust port is a cylinder, because I have little fan shroud things. Just connect to that, and then from there back is just either a short set of pipes with 2 catalytic converters on it, or whatever parts of an exhaust need to be there, or you could just slap a whole full set on there, whatever you decide. It's completely up to you. All I have is the exhaust, the port.
Well, think about it and see.
But it'd be a fun little project, right? Like combining the old and the new, illuminating a time-honored business of the community, as well as some of the up-and-coming businessmen of the community and yourself. It's hard to do lawn care with Bitcoin. I mean, I guess we could run over one with a lawnmower, but that would probably be more dangerous than anything.
Right.
But we could find a way. We could tie something together, use your imagination, we'll find a way. But I thought it would be fun to do. And again, to put you guys on the map and expose you to whatever Bitcoin, and you'd be surprised. There's a lot of Bitcoiners right here in this county. One of the biggest, not one of the biggest I've been to, but one of the biggest Bitcoin mining operations in this region is in Graham.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, they're in Graham, and they run the largest repair facility for those machines out of that same facility, and they're the largest repair facility in North America. I've met the owner and his team, just spoke with him today, actually. A solid group of people.
Over on Maple Street?
I believe so. Yeah.
Close to interstate.
They fixed one of my machines recently. I actually have the box from it over there where they replaced one of the power supplies. But they're really good. And there's also another guy that runs the Bitcoin mining museum, and he has one of every miner ever produced. Because before these, it was just regular computers, but then people started making these specialized ones. And he has one of every one that's ever been made. And he runs a traveling museum. So he goes to conferences and sets up all the miners, and people can come see how things have evolved over time, so on and so forth. But yeah, we can have some fun. I think it'll be cool. Yeah, we'll find a time to get together and do that.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea because like you said, who's ever put a muffler on a Bitcoin miner?
How many views you want to get?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, we'll wrap the lawn care right up in there with it. We'll make sure you're right a part of it. I've got great respect for your grandfather and not only his accomplishments but also his willingness to learn new things. And I've got great respect for you because you're not only in business, but you're in business and going to school for business, but you're also wrapping in technology. So you see what's coming in the future. Yeah. Your grandfather's leading you the right way, and you're taking the step, and that's more than most people will do. Right? So I applaud both of you, and I thank both of you for coming. Truthfully, you're only my third episode, but you're the only one I was prepping for. Yeah. The other two were just like, yeah, it's Taxman. I'm gonna sit down and talk to Taxman. The other guy was an electrician, great guy, but I didn't know him per se. But you guys, I knew who you were, and I knew you were into Bitcoin a little bit, and I'm like, yeah, I gotta straighten up a little bit, pull out my A game for these fellas. This is the A team coming in. So, but anyway, we'll wrap it up here.
All right.
Unless you guys got anything else, we can continue the conversation with some more fun stuff after we get off.
Okay.
But thanks, guys, again for coming in. And
thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Everybody, thank you for listening.